For months now, we have all been speculating and talking about the dreadlords and their new storyline, just kinda hinting in the dark, but right now, in the PTR, the origin was finally 100% confirmed by none other than Prince Renethal himself in a dialogue. Of course, massive spoilers from the PTR warning, but I just gotta say I really was right on a lot of these speculations with some of the previous videos, so let's dive deeper and look at the info that we do have. So, all of you are familiar with how it all started even before Shadowlands was released, the fabled Enemy Infiltration book. This opened a can of worms for dreadlord speculations, then people cross-examined the looks of the Nathrezim to the Nathrez, basing their evidence on the visual aspects, then we looked at the names, Nathrezah, Nathria, Nathrezim. People even went as far as to take famous dreadlord prefixes and attach them to the name of the Nathrez, such as D, Nathrez, Dat, Rock. So all in all, it was definitely one big giant can of worms. Well, no need for any of that stuff anymore, as from a questline of the Ventir Covenant, Renethal told us all this information himself and gave us a backstory on the Nathrezim. Turns out that yes, the dreadlords were created by none other than the Nathrez himself. Renethal had no clue what happened to them later on, and he was shocked that we were calling the Nathrezim dreadlords, as he never heard of that name. I'm guessing that is the Azeroth version of what we call them. So here is the actual full story. As Revendreth developed and assumed its role within the Shadowlands and the overall machinery, the leader, the Nathrez, first created a Ventir, which served various different roles to keep the Death Realm in balance, as all of you have seen that play through Revendreth. Soon after, the Nathrez went on another venture pretty much at the same time as the Ventir were being developed, and he created the Nathrezim. They were said to have been forged as the ultimate infiltrators. They bore the influence of death into different realms as well as into the worlds of the living. Keep in mind, Renethal here actually says bore the influence of death into the realm of our rivals, which is really interesting and something I'll discuss in a different video, but this is more than just a minor detail and a single word, and this has huge implications how Shadowlands actually sees other cosmological forces as rivals. So Shadowlands is not just the afterlife, but obviously a competing force in the Warcraft universe, and this has right now been officially confirmed by Blizzard themselves. Well, after their successful creation, things started to go wrong. According to Renethal, despite the intelligence and subtleties of the Nathrezim, the plot was discovered by the Naru, and guess what they decided to do as a response to this incursion? They launched a full-scale invasion directly into the world of Nathrezim in Revendreth. This was one gigantic catastrophe for the realm, but also confirmation that the Spire of Unseen Guests, that destroyed tower in Revendreth, was their seat of power and where they operated from. Turns out, Maldraxxus decided not to defend them, even though they're supposed to defend the other realms, for unknown reasons at this point. I'm guessing they figured that they brought this upon themselves and the light was only waiting as a form of revenge to teach them a lesson and not trying to take on a part of the Shadowlands for themselves. However, now Revendreth was in quite a terrible situation, to say the least. So the only way to fight the Naru and defend the realm was to create a small Maldraxxian army themselves and take defense into their own hands. So guess what the Nathrez did? He employed the Stone Rite to carve out the Stone Legion. These are like these Nathrezim gargoyle looking beings you have seen all throughout Revendreth to defend and strike back against the light. They were obviously successful and repelled the invasion, but I guess you can see that it was quite a costly victory by the state of the land even to this day, as this more than likely happened many thousand years ago, and that part of Revendreth looks like it was invaded yesterday, so yeah, the Naru definitely did quite a bit of damage. However, after the victory, there was really no time to rejoice and celebrate it, but instead, Stonewrite directly turned her anger upon none other than the Nathrezim themselves, blaming them for so many deaths of her children of the Stone Legion. From the sounds of it, it was quite a serious conflict, and I guess it might have led to a civil war and the destabilization of the realm, so the Nathrez decided to intervene and to figure out a solution. He decided to exile all of the Nathrezim far from the Shadowlands to a world beyond the afterlife, which now finally explains why they were in Nathrezim, the Twisted Nether, and why there were zero signs of the Dreadlords in Revendreth during both the quest phase and the Covenant campaign, despite this obviously being their home realm. Renethal finishes by saying that he never knew what became of the Nathrezim, and this is now the first time he hears of them since their exile, which, as I said, might have happened eons ago. Huge spoilers here for the PTR, of course, but the Dreadlords are currently on a full-scale mission of infiltrating both the Covenants, almost assassinating Renethal, saving the Nathrezim from Remornia, and most importantly, all the big names are here, such as Morganis and even Deathrock as well. What is the most surprising thing to me, though, is how much of this information I actually guessed in the previous videos. As you can check out my video on the light invasion of Revendreth I made months ago. I pretty much explained this exact scenario. However, finally we got all the official explanations and everything makes perfect sense now. Why the Nathrezim were not in Revendreth and why they didn't aid the Nathrezim in the most dire of times. They're obviously still loyal to him, but they couldn't be present within the realm. I'm guessing somehow they managed to just slip him that report. My thoughts are that the Nathrezim really liked the Nathrezim, and despite the fact that he exiled them, he didn't really exile them in the full sense of the word. It was more like, you guys gotta leave as we're on the verge of a civil war here and catastrophe, so go set up in a different base and we will stay in touch and just continue our work, just not from Revendreth but from Nathrezim or whatever word you managed to acquire. So that is pretty much exactly what they did. Of course, it wasn't confirmed whether the planet of Nathrezim was this new home base or if it was just the home base of the Legion infiltrated Dreadlords. It is still possible that they have yet another world in their control that we are yet to discover. However, what is really interesting here are some of the implications. Turns out the Light is actually the smartest of the cosmological forces and Legion the dumbest. A bit harsh to say, but they're definitely pretty dumb as they infiltrated the army to the absolute max, and the Dreadlords played around with the Titans and Sargeras like a cheap fiddle. However, it seems like they learned from their mistakes as they have infiltrated the Light successfully with Rotaxian, as you might have obviously seen. I'm guessing the first time they just went in with a brute force approach and it obviously backfired into this event, but now they realized all they had to do was just accept their truth, take on the form and attempt to redeem themselves, and bingo, they're in. I gotta say, I'm really glad we finally got the official storyline down and we no longer have to guess in the dark, although most of the guesses were actually right and it was really quite predictable. Blizzard didn't really make this all too hard for us. However, now that we have all this new knowledge, it will be really interesting to learn what will happen to the Dreadlords in the future of the Shadowlands. Thank you for watching. Check out how the Jailer will transform into his true form by clicking on the screen, and also check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.